I'm Zachary Heneden, co-host of the Last Shot podcast, and
I'm Julien Serrano-O'Neil, co-CEO of LSMG and co-host of the Last Shot podcast. And I would like to welcome everyone back to our coverage for the Tribeca Film Festival. This has been such an exciting time. We have members on the ground in New York and others getting ready. So it's been such a dynamic space. Today, we are incredibly excited to be sitting down with writer and director Ran Ran Wang to talk about her gripping new psychological sports thriller, I Think About Killing You, which is just celebrated its premiere actually already at the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me today. It's so good to be here, and it's so nice to meet you both.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here with us, just allowing us to experience this with you. I think that is incredibly awesome. Zachary.
all right, so we're gonna dive deep into the first question. So, the film follows a team captain, Dani, who is plagued with invasive fantasies of killing her abusive coach, forcing her into a corner when the boundary of violence is finally pushed too far. Can you dive deep into that theme? And that,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was a competitive athlete growing up, and it wasn't until I was much older looking back on that experience when I was like, wow, that wasn't normal. And this was especially true when I started actually talking to a friend who inspired the story, because I wasn't a rower. I was actually a judoka, which is very different. But she was a rower and she was telling me this horrible story. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that we actually had very similar experiences. I didn't realize that this is something that was happening to other female athletes this way. And I think there's this, when you're an athlete, you strive to be great. And often the way in which you become great is through obedience. And it's obedience for your coach, right? Your coach tells you how much you should train. They tell you how much, the sport tells you how much you can weigh. The sport tells you what you should be eating, how much water you should be drinking. And if you want to be great, you have to be obedient. And I think at what point does your need for survival, the thing that you're seeing happening to the people around you in your community, override your instinct, especially as a woman, to listen to what you're being told, especially when it comes from someone who is meant to have your best interest in mind, who is meant to be a leader in your life, and who is meant to be protecting you. And so I think it takes a lot, especially when you're a young woman, to get to the point where it's I have to say something and I have to change. And this short is very much about that. It's about the relationship between being a woman and being in competitive sport. And it's also about being a woman in community with other people and what we'll do to protect the people around us.
Right. And that's interesting that you say that, because I think pretty much everyone on our team has played an athletic sport of some kind in
Absolutely.
our lives. And while we were watching this this presser, it kind of gave our team a little bit of PTSD.
Yeah. Yes, a lot of people have told me that their jaw hurt when the credits rolled because they were clenching their teeth, which is, that's what I wanted. I wanted athletes to feel seen. I wanted them to recognize themselves in it, even if it was heightened. But absolutely, it's incredible actually how many people experience something similar to this.
And so when you were trying to tell this story, and hearing others have similar experiences, what in your mind said, I'm going to tell the story through this lens in this way?
So as a writer, personally, I love genre, right? And the last thing, and I love the way that you can use genre as a prism to kind of focus the conversation of the thing you want, right? In a lot of ways, I think genre can be a little bit of a Trojan horse to be ooh, look at this psychological thriller element, and then come into my house and see what I really have to say. And, I think the last script that I sold was like a really good example of this. It was like a Get Out Meets Jennifer's Body. And so I'm always looking for ways to use genre to like help me have that conversation. And so for here, it was like, you have such a small amount of time in a short to really like extend to the audience and bring them into that world and like help them feel that intensity and help them like feel that thing that you want them to feel, which is ultimately to be in the position of Dani, the main character, and to understand why she is pushed into the position to do what she does, or not to, we don't know. And so I think the use of genre is just like a really awesome way to like keep people on their toes, to help them feel what I wanted them to feel, and to invite people in to like really be one of these characters and feel the things that they were feeling.
Okay. So the film deals directly with systematic coach abuse. All right, and it's very it's provocative. What was the initial spark that made you want to do this taboo?
Yeah, so I came up in this industry, the entertainment industry, actually as like a studio executive, and I spent a lot of time like being like an intern and an assistant and being at the bottom of the totem pole before growing. And I was really, really lucky to have a lot of like amazing female bosses. But I think there are a lot of women in this industry who came up as the only woman in the room. And I think like when they are in positions of power, they have these really wonderful ideals of being like, the women under me are going to come up different. But they actually like don't know how to do that. It's never been displayed to them. And I think like I often have had experiences where like women I really, really admired, and who were there to mentor me and bring me and uplift me, were actually the people who hurt me the most. And so when I was thinking about this relationship, when I wrote the first draft, it was actually a male coach. And I think that dynamic is pretty familiar to people. You can imagine like kind of like that like male dominant and like relationship with like younger women. But I felt that something that was really under kind of like represented was the specific power dynamic between like a woman in power and a younger woman. And it's, I think, especially excruciating because like you're like, oh, you're supposed to get it. Like you're supposed to understand, like you're supposed to protect me because you've literally been here. And I think that's the thing that's like so tragic about the coach character is she's so scary, but you also feel this like sense of pity for her because you're like, oh, like she actually used to be just like one of these girls and she can't imagine a different way to be for them. And in that way, like, I hope you like understand her, even if you hate her.
Yeah, because there was, and I don't want to spoil it too much for our listeners who may have not watched this yet, but there was a point where you actually addressed that through the coach.
Yes.
And it kind of got me thinking in a way like, wow, it's a double standard also for,
yes,
the leaders, the coaches, the mentors in this space. People would turn a blind eye to this kind of behavior if it was a male. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to see that brought real time on the screen, I think a lot of people are going to resonate with that. What in your mind made you say, I need to have that said in this portion?
I think like this kind of stuff is like incredibly complicated and nuanced, right? And I don't think that like the story is rewarding if we cannot understand at all why the coach does what she does. And the truth is that like she's extremely human. She is probably the most human character in the whole film. And so I really wanted her to have her chance to speak and say her mind, even if it didn't make it right. Right. And like in her monologue, I think it really reveals to us what she thinks the systemic issue is, which is not that she's abusive, but that she's a woman. And this is fundamentally kind of mismatched with what the belief of the issue is with her team, like with her athletes, right? And like that kind of like disconnect and the inability to like bridge that difference is ultimately like why those two cannot come to a conclusion in that conversation. They're just like fundamentally opposed, right? And so I was like, I just really want people to understand her, and also to address like that, to make an acknowledgement, right? I think like you guys have been athletes, and like you have probably seen and maybe have experienced yourself that being pushed did make you better. And like, that's really complicated, right? That like, you know, like we can acknowledge that it's abusive and that it works, and that doesn't like, and it doesn't make the abuse right. But like you have to acknowledge that that is true. And that's part of what makes it so complicated and why it still happens, right? If it works, that's why people don't stop. And so to have the coach acknowledge it and to be like, I know what I'm doing to you because it was done to me and it made me great. It's like, yeah, you do kind of understand, right? And like, I know myself that I was better, and it wasn't right, but it was the right way and the only way, but I was better. And like that kind of like degree of nuance is like, you know, it's hard to put all of that in like 14 minutes, but as best as I could, I was like, let's make sure that like that part of like the complication that makes us understand why this is an untenable situation is there.
And you know, before, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, like you said, we all experienced and played sports before. I played basketball, and I definitely dealt with this, especially when it comes to Texas teams.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So, given that, Tiana Lee gives an incredibly intense performance as Dani. What did you see in her previous work or her audition that told you she could carry this massive and eternal and silent weight of this dark fantasy?
It's so amazing because like the character is like might have the least lines. Like this character carries the whole thing. We're with her the entire time, and she might have the least lines. And like it is so much on the actor and on Tiana to express kind of like the weight that she is carrying. It's all on her shoulders, and she just did an incredible job. And this is going to sound like really crazy, but we had a great casting director. I saw a lot of amazing women read for this role. And the number one thing I was looking for in the performance was, do I believe this person is capable of killing another human being? And like, that's like a pretty intense thing to be looking for in like a woman in her early 20s, like, like in an audition room. But I was like, if you can express that to me now, I know you can do it on the day. And ultimately that's what it was about. And Tiana is like the most bubbly, kindest, most generous person in real life. But when she turns it on, I was like, I think you fundamentally understand this character. And she actually was a competitive rower in high school. I didn't seek out on purpose a rower because it felt like a tall order to be like, you have to be a great actress and be a rower. But we got really, really lucky. And I think she understood what, you know, I think it helped her really understand like what was being asked of the character. And so, you know, she showed me that, and I saw it in her, and I saw it in her eyes, and I was like, I believe she could kill someone. And ultimately that's why she got the part, you know, and she did an amazing job. I think you believe her in the short too.
Yeah, I think she did an amazing job. And that kind of leads me to my question that was really centered on Bridget Regan, who
yes.
Played the coach. Bringing a really commanding, multi-layered experience or presence, rather, in this short film. How did you work with Bridget as the director and creator of this to ensure that the character wasn't just some kind of like cartoonish villain, if you will, but someone that was realistic, that people might be able to, you know, build that relationship with throughout the show? Yeah,
I mean, without Bridget, like without a really amazing person carrying that role, this whole short is like dust, right? Like it's dead on arrival if there's not someone there to carry that role. And like, I am so lucky that I had Bridget because she really, really killed it. And she did an amazing amount of prep work. Like she, you know, she's a theater kid. Like she was like not a competitive athlete growing up. Like this is not necessarily like, you know, like something that's like near and dear to her heart, but she actually ended up interviewing previous like rowing Olympic athletes. One in particular who's also a novelist, and like really, really did the research, did the mindset work, and like talked to this person about like what that experience was like. And, you know, Bridget really, in doing the work of building this character, really wanted to like understand her and like feel sympathetic for her as well. And I said it before, but I really do think the coach is like the most tragic and pitiable character. Even though she is the person in the most power, you know, she is completely alone. And like these girls are ultimately an extension of her, right? Like she sees these athletes as being part of her. And if this is how she treats the athlete, what does she think about herself, right? Because how she treats the athletes is how she treats herself. And it is how she thinks about herself. And you imagine her having been in the same position as these people, and you wish that she had someone like Dani on her team to speak up to her coach. And the other girls on this team have what the coach did not have, which was someone who was willing to do the thing to protect them. And so in that, it was like, you know, having those conversations with Bridget, building that out beyond the page was like what I think really brought the dimension to the character. And like, I hope you see her as formidable and also feel bad for her, which is a really difficult balance to strike, but she plays it so you just see in the portrayal and what Bridget did, how much she cares. And that's the thing that breaks everyone's heart, I think.
Yeah, because I think, and you know, before Zach asked the next question, I think as we were watching it, I was like, oh man, I'm feeling this right now. Like I got hairs raising up on my arms.
Yeah.
You know, that's awesome. And shout out to the thespians out there that are doing method acting and reaching out to people that can help them better understand their roles. Because I think Bridget did an amazing job. But Zachary,
she's so committed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you could tell by just the way she maneuvered the space, right? That she really did care about what she was trying to do in that way.
Absolutely. And she was bringing that to the day too. Like we would block while the shot was being put up, and she would be like, I really feel like, you know, like talking to this person, it sounds like this is what they would say, or this is how they would move, or this is where they would be in the room. And it's like, great, like, let's do that. Like, here's what we're getting. Here's what we're setting up. Like, let's play in the space. And she did an incredible job bringing in her research and like being open to play on the day and being flexible and being like, this is what I think it is. And, you know, she did an incredible job, and I give her all of the credit.
So the relationship between team captain and her coach is built on a distorted sense of loyalty. So how did Tiana and Bridget work together on set to cultivate that uncomfortable high friction chemistry?
It's so interesting. Actually, Bridget tried to spend as little time with the rowers as possible. Because if you actually meet Bridget in person, she's so lovely. Like, she is so kind and generous and lovely and so engaged that I think like there was a little bit of like, let's try and keep the mystique alive while they don't know what kind of person you really are. And obviously like we're on this set cultivating like a sense of like safety and like play and all of this stuff. Right. But it's like, you know, like let's, and everyone met and everyone said hello, but, you know, let's keep a sense of like almost like professional distance. And I think that also, you know, allowed them to kind of step into the room and to, you know, be like, we have a power dynamic that we can maintain because of the distance that we're keeping from each other on set. And so it was on the second day that we did that. So the first day we did most of the rooms most of the shots in the erg room. So all of that kind of like intense action with the entire team. And it was the second day where we did most of that, like, you know, the two shots, the emotional, the confrontation that the two of them have in the boathouse. And after the first day, you know, you wrap, and then they like really get to like bond and they really get to talk about the day. And so then they get to go into day two and go into this, you know, this scene that's just the two of them, and like really feel a sense of like, you know, having been together in the previous day, the intimacy of doing this thing together. And there was a degree of like, when we were in that room and doing that monologue where I was like, I want to feel like at any point, like one of you could kiss the other person. Like this is a lover's quarrel. Like that's like you are now behind closed doors, and like that's what we have to bring. Like it's a different element of intimacy that these characters are not allowed to have in front of the rest of the team. And so just playing around with our days, what we had on the schedule, and, you know, keeping cast together or apart at strategic moments, I think really helps them get into the mind space of what level of kind of like personal intensity and intimacy they needed to have.
No, that's incredible. And I think that really shows the commitment that everyone on the team had to this.
Oh my God, they gave me so much for something that was a 2-day shoot. They put their whole foot in it. It was crazy. I was like, thank you guys so much for your commitment. This is amazing.
And you would never know that it was a 2-day shoot based off of the product. Like it was so good. Like I was on.
That's so kind of you to say. Yeah, I have so many stories about production. It was really nuts. What we did in 2 days was like no short of a miracle, and involved just an incredible crew. And so I could talk about that forever, but I'm insanely grateful for what we got.
And if there was something that you wanted the viewer, whether they were at Tribeca or they're going to be wherever they can watch this, what is something that you really want them to take away, the message, the overarching experience, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think like whether or not you've been a competitive athlete, like I think that everyone can relate to a situation in which they were treated unkindly or badly and were told to be grateful. And for anyone who's ever experienced that, being told to be grateful for something that was hurting them, I see you and this film sees you. And I'm sorry that happened to you. And I think like you can be Dani for someone else in your life. If you can't stand up for yourself, if you feel like there's something that you can't say on your own behalf, it is so much easier to say it for someone else. And that person will thank you if you did.
No, that's so powerful. And I think that I think that's spot on right there. Kudos to you and your team. Zachary, is there any other questions that you might want to ask?
Yeah, so let's get into like the visual pacing, because she did bring up production, and the film beautifully crosses genres, blending sports drama with a deep psychological thriller. How did you use lighting and framing to pull the audience directly out of the bright arena of athletics into Dani's dark mental space?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. Dani's our POV character, right? And so like everything is through her kind of lens and her kind of feeling. And I work with an amazing DP. Her name is Zoe Simonier. And the first thing that we always do when we work together is like literally write a language. It's like, what is the language that we are going to create for this film? And the language of the film is different for everything that we work on, has different needs. And we start having those conversations right away. It's like, what do we want these people to feel? And it's like, we want exactly what you're saying, which is for them to feel like they're in Dani's shoes, and for them to understand how it feels, how suffocating it is, how trapped they are. And so that's when you start having conversations about like how we can use the tools of filmmaking to do that, so we can support what the actors are doing on screen. So they're not like out there in the dark, like on their own. Right. And so, you know, you talk about like, okay, what aspect ratio do we want to do? And it's like, well, let's do it in 4:3, because it forces the frame to be so tight. It forces us to focus on the middle of the image, and really put us in that person's kind of headspace. And, you know, how do we want to color the film? Like, what do we want to do in terms of like camera movement and that kind of stuff? And so we're having conversations not only about like the language of the film and what we want people to feel, but like, what are we going to be able to get realistically in these 2 days? And so we were like, where can we like match make and like, you know, work with what we have to tell the best story? And so we did a super majority of our shots static, on a tripod. and the camera didn't move because it really felt like the athleticism and like the kind of like explosiveness of movement should come from the athletes and not from the camera. And so camera movement is used very, very sparingly, but it's also just way faster to do way more setups when you're just putting the legs down and you don't have to lay down dolly track or something like that. So when we do use any dolly track or any movement, it's very intentional and it's very sparing. And this is something that really helped us like make our days. And so all the time you're kind of negotiating between like, what do we have realistically production wise, and what kind of thing do we want people to feel? And so you start to like Jenga these pieces together, you know, and develop a language. And I think the other thing about making a language is that like, I think you see this in the film too, where it's like, you know, we establish kind of this language of like these fantasies being these really intense fast cuts. And like, you know, we're teaching the audience as they're watching what they can expect. And then when they've become comfortable, you break the rules. And then that makes people really lean in. And so that final kind of scene of violence, it's different. And you go like, why is it different? And you get so confused. And so I think the beauty of developing a language and teaching the audience that language is that you get to delight and surprise them when you break the rules that you taught them. And so that's always what we're thinking about doing when we're putting together like what we think the film should look like and when we're doing our shot list. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. As a matter of fact, I think it really gives us an even better understanding of, like, now that you've shared that with me, I can see it even to a greater perspective. So that was awesome.
It's all a magic trick, right? Like, so me and the DP are like, how do we use the actors as like the distraction and use the magic of filmmaking to show you a cool trick? And like that's, and at the end of the day, that's what we're just trying to do. We're trying to delight and surprise and shock you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I think that this is going to be something that when the people see it, they're gonna be in awe with the product, you know. And
that's very nice of you to say.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you so much for your time, for the absolute brilliance that you and your team have put forward for this. It's such a beautiful narrative to see on the screen, giving people and allowing them to feel seen, right? So thank you for coming on here to allow us to experience your thought.
Yeah, thank you guys. A lot of people watch it and it surprises them, and I think they laugh with nervous laughter. They're like, I don't know how to react, so I'm just gonna laugh. And I encourage you guys to, you know, anyone who watches it to do that, you know, and to let it surprise you and thrill you and to have a good time. And I'm also happy to say, like, this is a proof of concept. There's a larger feature, and me and my team are probably going to go out with that feature pretty soon. So there's more to this world. There's more to these characters. There's more mysteries. And I'm just so grateful that you two gave me your time today. Thank you so much for coming and for being so engaged with the work and for being such close watchers. You guys are just great at this. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Zachary.
Thank you for the opportunity. Ran Ran Wang, thank you so much for your time and your absolute brilliance. And we hope you have a great day and an awesome festival week at Tribeca.
Thank you guys.
And to everyone that's watching and listening, make sure you do not miss the opportunity to watch if you get a chance. I Think About Killing You. It is at the Tribeca Film Festival right now. Keep on watching and tuning into us so that you can keep up with what's happening at the film festival. Again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing what happens next.
Thank you, guys. Bye.